Well, today we are going to debunk those myths. And please bear in mind that this is our approach to this topic, and there can be various other ways looking at it. And instead of me going through this today, I have asked my lovely colleagues Kate, Mari, and Julie to conduct the research and bring the results to you. During the webinar, I kindly ask you to write your thoughts and questions into the chat window. So, without further ado, let's hear what is going on with this time tracking and why is it more important than one actually thinks.
Why can time tracking be beneficial even if you have fixed pricing? I can think of at least 3 reasons why to track time nonetheless. Firstly, it gives you information to set the fair price. Even if you have a fixed fee for your services, you need to know the expenses, to know how much to charge for them. It's not uncommon to do free work for clients. It might happen because of several reasons. Workload has increased over time, or the price was set too low in the first place. In addition, time tracking data gives you an overview of how profitable your services are. Do you know what are the most profitable services you provide? Perhaps some services are not profitable at all. Time tracking data stops the guessing and gives you facts. And if you know the profit margin of the services, you can adjust the price where needed and focus on the most profitable ones. Probably you are familiar with the Pareto principle that 80% of consequences come from 20% of causes. Time tracking data can help you get paid for unplanned work. Sometimes a client might need additional services that are not agreed to on a fixed plan. If these jobs are documented, you can easily invoice them and provide service evidence. Second reason to track time even with fixed pricing is that the data gives you needed information to plan work better. Time tracking data gives you an overview of employee workload and time spent on client or a task. When a new client or employee joins the company, you have an overview and it's easy to make changes to divide work equally. Time tracking data can be beneficial when the client's workload increases gradually. When clients grow, you might have to decrease the number of clients employees serve, so you wouldn't overload them with work. Third reason to track time with fixed pricing is to identify problems and solve them. I give you 2 examples. Let's imagine you have several clients that are approximately the same size, but time spent on one is significantly higher. From time tracking data, you can see which task or tasks take longer than the average. You might discover that with one client, communication takes longer. The client don't send documents on time and the accountant has to send several reminders. Knowing that, you can start to think of a solution. Of course, you can raise the price, but perhaps there is a better solution. You could try automatic reminders to decrease the manual work. Now let's imagine another scenario where you again have similar clients and serving one takes longer. This time, client communication with all of them takes approximately the same amount of time. But this time, you see that inserting documents take longer with the client. When you investigate the situation further, you might notice that the client is served by a new employee and they have been inserting documents almost every other day. Other accountants usually do it only a couple of times a month in bulk. With this information, you can go to the new employee and share best practices with them. Perhaps you should change the onboarding process by adding some additional training.
So another myth is that time tracking is frustrating and people don't like it. I think the main points I've heard what people think about tracking time are doesn't help me to achieve my goals. It feels like I'm being micromanaged. My boss wants to control me. And time tracking takes too much time. But I think that most of the time these feelings occur when the reason why time is tracked is not communicated clearly. So here are some of the reasons why tracking time is good and how you can motivate your people. Firstly, it creates clear overview of the workload. For example, if the workload has increased, then time data shows it clearly. This is the quickest way to see when someone is overloaded and if there is a need to reorganize some tasks within the team. Secondly, it helps to create realistic timelines. Something you may think is a typical task may actually be more complicated. So if you have already aligned on a timeline with a customer or client, you could have a problem. But if you have historical data ready, then you have the opportunity to avoid the frustration of having too little time. Thirdly, it gives your company an opportunity to offer flexible working hours and remote work. I think this is not a question how. But another point, when the time comes to ask for a promotion, it can be a difficult conversation to prepare for and initiate. But with time tracking software, leadership can quickly see a historical view of your impact to the organization and how this compares to others on the team. And also, time tracking increases productivity. For example, if you track your typical workday and analyze how you've spent your time, then you have better overview of how to organize your tasks so that everything you wish to accomplish in one day can be accomplished as well.
On to the next myth. Time tracking data can be easily manipulated. This one's quite controversial, isn't it? I would ask you too if you have ever manipulated your time entries, but I think that's a secret no one wants to tell. Regarding the myth, that might be true. In a perfect world, people are reliable, but that is not always the case in reality. When trusting everyone with tracking their own time on paper or in Excel, an uncontrolled situation, track time indeed can be manipulated. For time tracking to be reliable, it's important to pick the right tools. A program that is specifically for time tracking allows the manager to disable manipulating time entries. Of course, there are different kinds of software. There are the ones that allow just time tracking, the ones that let you manage your tasks in addition to time tracking, and programs specifically for accounting firms that have many other features in addition to time tracking. And from here, I would like to move forward to the next myth. Paper timesheets or Excel are just as good as any software. As mentioned before, paper timesheets and Excel sheets are very easily manipulated. This does not mean that every accountant wants to fake their working hours. There are quite a few benefits when using a program instead of paper sheets or Excel. Many time tracking programs have a stopwatch function. No need to remember the exact time you started the tasks or enter the time by hand. Just use the stopwatch and the time for the tasks starts running automatically. And at the end time as well is automatically entered. Using the software is much more comfortable than using papers or Excel. Safe to say Excel is not the easiest program to learn or use. And papers tend to get lost even in the best of systems. Either when you want to mark time down or it's time to present your sheets. So using a software where data is saved automatically is so much easier. Checking time tracking data can also be quite time consuming, wasting the manager's valuable time that they can spend on one-on-ones with their employees or just talking to employees. And the best feature of the software, analyzing, don't bother typing data from a timesheet to Excel. The software does it for you. This allows you to make meaningful business decisions based on actual data.
Uku is one solution for accountants to track time. In addition to time tracking, Uku has other features like work management, CRM, automatic billing, and client agreement monitoring. There are 3 ways to track time in Uku: manual time logging, timer, and bulk time logging. Manual time entry is very convenient in Uku. Open a task and fill in 2 fields: start and end time, start time and duration, or end time and duration. Automatically, Uku suggests the start time based on when the last task ended. The timer is probably the most accurate way to track time. Start the timer when you start the task. To do that, find the task and click on the play button. When you move on to another task, repeat the process. Find the task and click on the play button. The timer on the other task will stop automatically. Sometimes you want to log time to multiple tasks at once. To do that, select the tasks and click on the play button on the blue menu. You can insert equal time to selected tasks or divide it between them equally. Uku also provides some helpful time tracking settings. You can make time tracking compulsory for some or all clients. This way, time has to be logged to the task before it can be marked done. It helps to ensure that people don't forget to log time. Another helpful time tracking setting allows you to disable manual time tracking. With this setting, time can be logged only with the timer. This can significantly increase the accuracy of the time data.
Thank you so much, girls. I am now with Kate and Julie, the masters of time, and I really enjoyed watching the points you brought out because I've heard those over the years, and I think one of the most significant one is that I don't need to track time because I have a fixed price or have packages. I don't need this. But often you don't even actually realize when clients ask your accountants to prepare some reports for them, they have one additional car, they want to get a loan from the bank, and accountants by their nature, they want to please everybody, and they don't necessarily know or want to ask money for it. But profitable business can only run profitable when it's charged their clients as well for their work that they're doing. And I've seen over the years as well that if you bring this time tracking data to your customers, they don't necessarily want to get a free service. They want it to be justified for them. And if you have the data and the proof, they're happy to pay for what they get. It's just a matter of the skill of negotiation and having this data. I'm going to open the chat window. If you haven't written down your question yet or your thoughts that you would like to discuss in this discussion round, then please do so because we're going to take the questions from this chat box. But anything else that you reminded yourself after the webinar, like, oh, this is something I wouldn't want to mention. Sometimes you have this feeling when you walk out the door and you say, I wanted to say this as well. Is there something that you would like to say in addition?
I really liked Mari's point that people and employees are happy to track time if it's justified and explained well.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
I agree, yes.
This is also what I've seen in my practice, that firstly, the employees, well, I have a lot of thoughts in my mind at the moment, but I'm trying to bring them down to like a concrete point. But time tracking is often done in a way that at the end of the week, I'm going to fill out all the tasks and the times that I was dealing with this week. And this is not accurate. This is nowhere near as accurate as you would want to be able to bring this to your clients or to be able to negotiate the salary with your employee or the value that your employee brings. Doing it in real time is actually increasing the efficiency of your work, because when you start the timer for a task, it's more likely that you're actually doing the task and focusing on this task than just starting to do something and then doing something else and not remembering what you were doing before. Clients call, emergencies happen, and you need to jump between tasks all the time. But having this, like what I did 30 minutes ago, is very important and crucial. And when implementing Uku in companies, firstly, it might be a little bit difficult to remind yourself to put in the time in real time. But after like practicing it for 2-3 weeks, you cannot even imagine going back to the time when you, on Friday evening, you're like, oh, I have to fill in timesheet, what I did. And then you start coming up with tasks and times for the Excel sheet or whatever you're using. Anything from you, Julie?
Yeah, sure. Everything. Yes, I think time tracking is even more valuable to the employee than the manager, because it's motivating, like you said. And I can see that I do a lot of work. I'm really good at my work and I do it well, and it takes maybe a little less time than I thought it would. So I think it's a quite good motivator.
Yeah, and we track time as well with Uku, and from the time tracking, we discovered that we have meetings laid out throughout the whole week, and it just breaks our work into so small pieces that we have less time to concentrate on each topic. So what we did with this data was that we pulled all the meetings for Wednesday. So we have a Wednesday full of meetings and brainstorms and ideas. And then the rest of the week is free of meetings. And this actually came out from time tracking, that we saw that we have too many meetings. We have this topic tag meetings, and we saw that we're just spending too much time on meetings. We have to do something about it. Like, let's bring them to smaller, like less employees involved in specific meetings, or can we just take off something completely? And it has helped me personally a lot, because I have so much more free time to concentrate on the clients and implementing Uku in the various accounting practices.
And now we have more time where we can focus on tasks that need to be done. Before there was some meetings on some days and some and others. So this works well for us.
Yeah.
And I really liked your recommendation that you often do, to start small. You can start with some projects or with some clients, see how it goes, and then implement the process throughout the company and throughout.
And the mistake I often see that is being made is that tasks are taken into too little pieces. You know, one takes 1 minute, 2 minutes, and then it's too frustrating for an employee to track time. This is where I put my hands up and say you're completely right. But think about time tracking as creating the pieces that you want to actually know how much time they take. For example, annual accounts can be one big piece. You don't need to do the checklist into each task. Or if you need to report to the government some reports, VAT report, you want to make sure that you know when this task is done, and you want to make sure that you know how long it takes, because sometimes you need to have to do some like fixes to the report after the submission date, and then it's important to know how long they take. But make sure that your tasks that you track time for are not less than 15 minutes. If they're less than 15 minutes, maybe you can put them together with some other task, name it as accounting, and create a checklist for yourself. Don't over engineer it. Honestly, this is my warm recommendation to you all. I had a thought before that just one thing. When you've never time tracked before and you start doing it, it's actually really, really awesome to see how people react to it. Because at the end of the workday, you feel like you've been busy the whole day. You've been doing a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, you don't actually remember what you were doing. Or if you start time tracking, you see that you only logged like 4 hours of time. And then you think like, where did the rest go? And then you start thinking like, okay, I spoke with my colleague at the coffee place for half an hour. Then I read the news for like 20 minutes. Then I went to Facebook Marketplace for 5 minutes looking for a bed for my apartment. And you start putting these little pieces together. Then you realize like, okay, maybe I'm not doing as much as I thought I'm doing. And maybe the reason why I'm like always struggling with at the end of some like crucial dates is because I'm just not doing the things before. And time tracking actually helps you also to line up different tasks throughout the month. So if you start time tracking and on the 9th or 10th of the working day of the month, you see that you work like 12, 14 hours. My mom, who is a head accountant for big international companies, I remember from my childhood that at the beginning of the month, I didn't see her at all because she was never home. But today, when you have these tools, you can actually play things around for yourself, for your own well-being. You can make agreements with clients like, please bring me the documents for the 3rd of the month. Don't do it on the 10th at 11 hours or something when it's only 1 hour for me to make the report. You can set different deadlines with different customers and make your own life easier. And if there's some clients that you can work with at the end of the month, push them to the end of the month and don't feel bad about it. It's okay. Anything else that you have in mind that or somehow that time tracking has helped you to achieve your goals? Let us know in the chat. Otherwise, we keep talking here. But we don't want to waste your time as well. Because, you know, time is money. Anything you want to add?
One thought I had that you don't need to, you're time tracking, but you don't need to stop your timer when you're just looking at 5 minutes at the marketplace spending. Yeah. That's not a lot of time. Yeah. When you do it like on an hourly basis, or maybe in every half an hour, you look at marketplace for 5 minutes, then yes, maybe you need to think about your actions. But time tracking, this goes with time tracking is it violates my privacy, that you don't have to every second that you go to the bathroom or take a coffee, this doesn't mean you don't do work, you're still thinking about work. Yeah. That's the point. Yeah, I was thinking of, that it's not for controlling, it's just for your own good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And one thing I also recommend for practices to put into practice who are using Uku is to have Uku as their central hub. So when you start doing an activity or work for a client, start the timer in the first place. Before you log into the bank, before you log into any portal, start the timer first, because you start doing this action already. So yes, this was my question, how to explain to employees that I'm not an employer who won't harass about time tracking in too detail, or how detailed it should be logged or checked. It's individual for each company. I have seen companies where they have to log even bathroom breaks, and people still work there. It's good management that explains to employees that this is okay, or this is necessary to log each minute. But I really recommend to keeping it as broad and as detailed as necessary. Don't ask for your employees to stop the timer when they go to the bathroom. Ask them to stop the timer when they go for lunch.
Or log in lunch separately.
Or log in lunch separately. It's if there is 45-minute break in a day, then it's clear that you had some food. And how to explain to employees? Well, some points that, or how I've explained is that it motivates. So they want to have more salary. We all want to have more salary, and the more value we create for the company, the more valuable we feel as well. And it's not that I'm tracking my time, please pay me more, but the company needs to make this money somehow to be able to pay you more. And you have to bring this data to the management. If the management doesn't know about the activities you're performing for the client additionally, and you don't bring them forward, you cannot expect this to pay you more money. It's a circle, like or a triangle, or whatever form of thing you want to think of it, but it has to be that the activities you do, you bring them to the management, and the management can then think what they want to do with this information. So one thing is actually a pay raise. Another thing is that we want you to be happy, and maybe to ask them like, okay, you're buying a smartwatch to track the time for the activities that you do. You go for a run, you see that I ran for an hour. You track your sleep, you track your life. Why wouldn't you track the time that you're actually spending on customers' work? That's my thought about it.
I would say as an employee, if my manager doesn't ask me for explanations, so I have my time entries, maybe they're not the best, like the titles are a little weird, but I know what I did then, and maybe I log some time when I don't know, I start talking to a colleague, and a task I actually spent 15 minutes on takes 20. But my manager doesn't come and ask me, Julie, what did you do? Why is that so long?
Yeah.
Because I know what I did. And maybe I forgot the time running. Maybe I did a little something doing the task, but it's not that important.
Yeah.
So when I fill my working hours and their normal tasks, I don't expect to be questioned. This is not the police.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just my work.
Employees often think that if they have what time are running for one task for too long, then each of their tasks are analyzed and thought about, and how long it should actually take, and why did it take you so long? Nobody does that.
Yes.
Nobody does that. They look at the broad picture. They have 300, 500 clients. You don't have the time to drill down to each one of the tasks. You just look at the broad picture. And I think this is the information you should bring to your employees, that this is to get the broad picture. And being able, if we see that there are some problems with some tasks, with some clients, we then are just able to drill down and see where the problem is. It's not to analyze each one of your steps. Of course, good comment about Jelena, that it's very good recommendation to take a 15-minute break after every hour, just to rest your brain. Just to look outside of the window, try not to think about anything. If you do, it's okay. But yeah, take breaks, take recent breaks. It helps you to be more productive as well throughout the day. Is it a question or a thought? One app for whole time management. Managers can see if someone doing over hours and so on. If you do not need any additional Excels to keep track of whole working time. Yep, it's one centralized place where you get all the information about your employers, your clients, over hours. If one person is doing too many over hours, then in the long run, in the short term, it's fine. But in the long run, we each want to have a balanced work and life. Yeah. Okay, thanks. And how do you do it in Nuku? And in Nuku, my colleague showed you how to track time. There are actually 4 ways. There's also one that is for the grumpiest employees that don't want to hear anything about time tracking at all. So you can set the prognosis for each task. You say like, this one should take 1 hour, and they just have to mark that I've done it, I've done it, I've done it. They don't have to track time, but you still get some overview of how much your employee is working on, because you estimate each task they're performing, and then you get the analysis. But the best practice is to track time with the stopwatch. If you forget, you can also add time manually, but you can always also turn this option off so that time can be only tracked with a stopwatch. And we have companies actually doing that as well, that nobody can manipulate the time entries, only stopwatch. If you forget, you have to go to your team leader and say, please make a correction to my time entry. If you want to know how it's done in Nuku and how it's an infrastructure. You have your clients, you have a task, you track time, you create invoices based on time, working amount, documents, salaries, fixed price plus extra work. Then book a demo with us and we show you personally how to do it. And if you have any specific problems in your company, or you want to discuss how you can motivate your employees to take on time tracking and feel good about it, then we have been putting Uku in place in over 200 practices over time. And we have seen quite a lot of use cases and no failures so far. So I hope that yours is not the first. But yeah, some employees are stricter than the others, that I don't want my time being tracked. So an employee has to rest at least 10% of the working overall time with the PC. So if you're working like 8 hours a day, 7 hours a day, you have to rest for 10% of it. So this is, I think this is the law even. Yeah, so this is even the law. So if you have a problem that you don't see any breaks in your employees' time tracking, then maybe you can suggest them to take some breaks throughout the day to rest as well. Any other questions, thoughts? We will put up this recording also for you to watch later and maybe share with your colleagues. Thank you, Esta. Yeah, Esta loved the comparison with the time with tracking your sleep and runs. I know people who've got their sneakers on and driven to a nature trail, but then didn't go for a run because they forgot their smartwatch. I imagine tracking time at work can similarly become such second nature. A friend of mine texted me while he was on a bike ride, and he said that he forgot to start Strava. This is like a place for athletes to track their activities, and he had a flat tire throughout this exercise, and this wasn't the worst thing. The worst thing was that he forgot to start Strava, because he has to, well, then put it manually, but all the data you get about your heartbeat and cadence and power, you don't have it anymore because you don't have the tracker. But yeah, if you think about it that way, then time tracking can be like a second nature at work, that you want to do it. You don't go to work without tracking your time. I'm not going for a run without putting my smartwatch on, or with my without my heart rate belt. So work, time tracking, exercise, tracking, sleep, tracking. If I wake up in the morning and I feel like I'm tired, I just don't feel quite right, I look for my watch. How much sleep did I have? How many times I woke up at night? And I know immediately, like, oh, that's why. My cat lived on my head for the whole night. I couldn't sleep because of that. And I can make decisions after that. If I just wake up in the morning and think like, oh, I'm not well rested and don't have this data, I cannot be better. So you can only, how this saying goes, that you can only improve what you measure, or you can only improve the measurables. So if you measure, you can improve. Yeah.
And it helps to organize. Not, at least in my experience, now I do less multitasking. It helps to focus on one task properly, and things get done faster.
Yeah, and in my practice, I come to work every morning. I look at my Uku dashboard, my list of activities, and I see straight away, for some tasks, I just don't have time today. And I start thinking like, okay, well, how can I play my day around? How can I play my week around? And at the end of the day, when I'm tracking my time, I feel less stressed about that maybe I forgot something, because I have my list of activities. I know how long I spent each one of them. And if I didn't do something, at least I know that I didn't do it, and I can do it tomorrow. But if you don't have an overview of your activities, the time you're spending on each one of them, the stress that it might cause, it's just not worth it. It's much easier to track time than to deal with the stress. You go home, you think, oh, did I do this? I cannot remember anymore. Oh my God. It's all solvable. All these problems are solvable.
Yeah, and then you can make sure that you are prioritizing the best way you can. I postpone the task that can be done later.
Yeah, and if Kate or Julie or Mari will ask me like, oh, Trine, do you have some time to look over this, or can you help me with that? Then I say, then I can be like, yes, I have time tomorrow. Or if your client asks you for a bigger report, you look at your tasks, you know if you've already tracked time, you're going to know how long they're going to take because you have the data and you have the knowledge. And when the client asks you, you can be realistic about the timeline or the deadline you're going to give for them. You look at your tasks and see like, yeah, I can do it next week. Even though it's only Tuesday today, I have time next week. And your client's like, okay, I'll wait until next week. If you would say like, yeah, I'll do it. And then you start doing it, like you're going to force it into between some activities that were already planned, and you're going to overwork because of that. But be realistic about the deadlines you give as well. A lot of good things that come out of time tracking. Yeah. I also noticed that when I started to track time, now know better which hours of the day I am the most productive. Oh, this is a good one. Yep. I'm a morning person. I'm super efficient in the morning hours and late night hours. I'm also an owl. But some, they need to have lunch before they start working. And in the morning, they just might as well read news.
I think it's even in the week perspective.
Yeah.
On Fridays, I think we're extremely productive for a Friday. So usually Fridays are like kind of lazy days.
Yeah.
You do some work, but they're the easier tasks mainly. But today is a really productive day.
Yeah, today is productive day. Normally Fridays for me, I've realized like I'm not that productive. So I'm taking those days to learn something new. So I'm educating myself on Fridays. Either I'm reading something, just speaking with customers, not doing anything that is too much, that needs too much focus or attention. So yeah, and at the beginning of the week, I can fly to the sky. Yeah. And on Thursdays, sometimes I feel like I'm really drained. I feel like I'm so tired on Thursdays. And I know why. It's because I have very intense meetings on Wednesdays. And then on Thursdays, I just feel like I need to take on something easier. And I know that because I know what I'm doing on Wednesdays. Otherwise, I wouldn't even remember what I did this morning. I think it's time to stop here.
I think so too.
Yeah, you think so too? Anyway, thank you very much, everyone who made the time to join us today and to think along. And if you have any good practices about time tracking, please share them with us. We're like a central hub for gathering all this information and sharing it with people. So thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Julie, Kate, and Mari, for preparing the webinar today. And see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.